What's up, guys? It's Vic here with Strikers Reptiles. We haven't made a video in a long time. It's been a crazy couple of weeks for me and my girlfriend Erin. I just started at a new job, and she also had her second kickboxing match, which she won by unanimous decision. And so she was very busy training, and then of course we were out of town for the weigh-in and fight. I was cornering her and all that. So, it's been a great couple of weeks, a busy couple of weeks. We haven't been able to put any new videos out. We're back at it now. As you guys probably are well aware, almost all our content for the last 2 months, I'd say, has been pretty much almost exclusively Savannah Monitor related. And as I've stated time and time again, that was because it was Savannah Monitor import season, when the majority of baby hatchling Savannah Monitors are being shipped across the world to the West. So I want that information to be out there for new keepers. We're still going to be creating a lot of Savannah Monitor content, but we are also going to focus a little more on some of the other stuff we dabble in, because we do have a lot of subscribers that want to see stuff that isn't Savannah Monitor related. One of our most popular videos was a video about African soft-furred rats, and we've had a lot of people asking for follow-up videos on that. So before we actually started using African soft-furred rats for our ball pythons and breeding them as feeders for our ball pythons, we were given a lot of reasons why we shouldn't use African soft-furred rats. Some of those reasons included them being addictive, them being hard to find, them being hard to breed, them being aggressive when you breed them. These were all reasons that did not turn out to be good enough reasons, basically, for us to not breed and feed them to our ball pythons. So with that, this video is going to be 3 reasons why we believe African soft-furred rats are actually the best feeder rodent when it comes to ball pythons. Reason number 1 is pretty obvious. Ball pythons absolutely love African soft-furred rats. It makes perfect sense that they invoke such a strong feeding response in ball pythons, since they are in fact the natural prey items of ball pythons. When it came to converting our 6-year-old ball python, who had been on live rats for her entire life, over to frozen thawed food, what I consider to be our silver bullet for switching her over was in fact an African soft-furred rat. In our experience, a snake that is not willing to eat a frozen thawed rat will sometimes eat a frozen thawed African soft-furred rat. That's how strong of a feeding response they invoke. We have one ball python that most people would call a mouser. That means he eats only mice, and a lot of people consider that to be a problem because obviously, there's a big size difference between mice and rats, and most people want their ball pythons to eat rats. But one of our ball pythons would only eat mice until we started using African soft-furred rats. He'll eat mice and African soft-furred rats now. The other point that brings me to is that we find African soft-furred rats to be non-addictive. Pretty much all of our ball pythons, we don't have that many, but all of ours will eat mice, rats, and African soft-furred rats. We do have the one that'll only eat mice and African soft-furred rats, but everyone else is just, you put it in front of them, they'll eat it. And that's after feeding them African soft-furred rats 5, 10, sometimes 20 times in a row. They do make up the bulk of our feeders for ball pythons, since they are the only rodent we breed. And even with that, our ball pythons seem to have no issue switching back to other types of rodents. So our second reason for feeding and breeding African soft-furred rats is because of serving size and nutritional content. Now when it comes to mice and rats, as far as serving size for ball pythons, neither is perfect. And that is because one stays too small and one gets too big. Mice top out around 30 to 45 grams, which is far too small for your average adult ball python. And rats can top out anywhere from 1 pound plus, 400 to 700 grams. I mean, rats can get totally huge. So you run into this issue where you either have to feed multiple mice, or you have to be feeding off and putting down rats before they become too large to be fed to your ball pythons. And they grow very quickly, so a medium rat, I think that's like 8 to 10 weeks old. Not very old, and just a few weeks later it's going to be quite a bit too large for even your biggest female ball pythons. When it comes to African soft-furred rats, they actually top out at generally no more than 100 grams. Mine tend to top out around 70 to 80 grams, but I've heard of people saying that theirs have gotten up to 120. Regardless of the slight differences, These are all numbers that are excellent for an adult ball python feeder. When you raise African soft-furred rats, you don't have to worry about putting them down before they grow too large to be fed to a ball python. Because of that, you have a lot of convenience when it comes to feeding off retired breeders and having plenty of food on hand for your large females. As far as nutritional content goes, it's widely believed that constrictors like ball pythons benefit from a higher protein, lower fat diet. Baby ball pythons are often largely considered to benefit from a decent amount of calcium in their diet due to the fact that their bones are developing throughout the early stages of their lives. With all that in mind, ball python keepers can run into an issue with their snakes early in life when it comes to deciding what type of rodent to start their snakes on. Now, many ball python keepers are terrified of their ball pythons getting addicted to mice due to the fact that they will later in life have to feed multiples just to keep the snake fed. So for that reason, they want to start their ball python on rats immediately. The unfortunate side effect of this is that unweaned rats that are the appropriate size for hatchling ball pythons, which are called fuzzy rats, are high in fat and low in calcium. This results in a less than perfect meal. I'm not saying that ball pythons can't grow up healthy on them, but it isn't nutritionally ideal. For that reason, some people actually will start their ball pythons on mice. They say that because the mice are already weaned when they can be fed off to hatchling ball pythons, they have a higher calcium content and a lower fat content. Now, in our opinion, the happy medium is an African soft-furred rat. You end up with a rodent that is an appropriate size to feed one for your snake's entire life, but it's already nearly weaned by the time it's an appropriate size for your hatchling ball pythons, which means it does have that high calcium content, but it's also got the high protein content. This also brings me to another point, which is that it is widely believed that African soft-furred rats have a higher protein content than both mice and rats. I haven't been able to find any scientific literature proving this, so if anyone knows of any and could point me in that direction, I'd greatly appreciate it. But it has been a widely held belief amongst many ball python keepers for a very long time that African soft-furred rats have a higher protein content than both mice and rats. Our last reason for using African soft-furred rats is the simplicity of being able to breed them. Now, out of all rodents, African soft-furred rats are widely known for being the least foul-smelling. Obviously, you still have to keep their cage and bedding clean, but they produce the least strong odor, the least uric acid, I believe, out of any feeder rodents. They also eat and drink less than your typical mouse or rat. Gram for gram, they're consuming less food and water. That leads to a more efficient rodent breeding colony and less money spent on food and water. Other rodents are also often bred by cycling males, which is when you move males from one tub to another in order to give females a rest, or using maternity tubs, during which time you separate a pregnant female so that she can raise her young without being disturbed. None of that is possible or necessary when raising African soft-furred rats, as they can live in the same family-style group for their entire lives, and the male will actually help to raise the young, so you can keep your group of one male and 3 to 6 females together at all times. That makes it very easy. There's nothing to think about or remember to do at certain times of the month when you need to separate your females. You just keep them all together in one tub and everybody gets along for the most part. They're also less cannibalistic than mice and take up far less space than rats. Last but not least, they are also known for being vicious and very keen on biting. That can be true depending on what line you get yours from. However, ours are very friendly, and through selective breeding, you can actually reach a point where they are very friendly, maybe not as hand tame as your typical pet quality fancy rat, but they do get to the point where they can be handled, worked around. You're not going to be bitten every time you go reaching in the tub. Now, obviously, there's still some maternal aggression if you go putting your hand in front of their faces while they're sitting on babies. I don't do that. I'm not sure if they'd nip me or not. However, if you select from an appropriate bloodline, you can get breeder quality and pet quality African soft-furred rats, which makes them very easy to work with and work around. Guys, if you're interested in seeing more content like this, let us know in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're down there. Click that bell icon so you get a notification every time we upload a new video. Thank you guys very much. Please have a great rest of your weekend.